maybe the obvious question would be like, well, is it better than it was, or is it worse than it was? And that's not really a quantifiable thing for me right now. Hey beautiful people, how are you? My name is Connor and you're watching ThrivingMinimalist.com. This is the first video you're tuning into on the channel. We talk about minimalism. We also talk about living a life of abundance and health, and a focus on love and connection with others and connection with ourselves. So I recently completed this 10-day silent meditation. It's called a Vipasanna course. Vipassana is the style of meditation that I participated in, and wanted to reflect on it. I have talked to maybe a dozen people who have done the meditation before. I keep running into more and more people who have done the meditation, but if it's the first time you've ever heard about it, maybe I can just give you maybe a 60-second rundown of what the course looks like, and then kind of talk about my reflections on it. So it's a 10-day course, but really it's kind of like 11. And because you go in and you start that evening, and then it goes until the 11th day morning. And during that time, you participate in something they call noble silence. So not only are you not verbally speaking, but you're also not speaking, communicating with other people with your body. So there's no body language, there's no eye contact. For instance, if, generally in the world, we would maybe hold the door for someone if they're a few feet behind us. That might happen at one of these courses, but the idea is that you open the door and you close the door, and that's your action. And if someone is in front of you about to open the door, you just wait and kind of pretend like no one is there, let them do their action, and then you participate in your action, so that there's no overlap so that you can't interact. And there were many occasions like that in noble silence, where you're about to get something to eat and someone else is about to get something to eat, and you have to kind of let them complete their action before you do. So that happens for 10 days. You break the noble silence on day 9, but it starts the evening of, so it's, I guess, 9.5 days complete. Noble silence. It's also separated by sexes, so men are in one side, women are in another side, and you all come together to meditate in the same hall. Most of these courses, you have a single room, or you have at least a room with a curtain, so you're in your own kind of space. And most of the days, they're about 11 hours of meditating or something like that, not all of which you would have to participate in, but at least half of them you would be kind of in the hall publicly meditating. Another half of those you could be kind of in your room, and you could be obviously doing whatever you wanted in your room up to a certain extent, sleeping or just laying there and thinking. But on the schedule, it's marked in as meditating. The other things about the program are that you do not engage in other things besides really, you eat food, you sleep, you can take a walk on the walking path, you can meditate, and then obviously you can think and fantasize and that kind of thing. But you're not supposed to bring in any books, anything to write on, no electronics of any kind, obviously not your phone or your computer. And also exercise. You're really supposed to abstain from exercise and sexual activity. So it'd be pretty rare that you would have an instance where you would have sexual contact with someone else, but self-sex is something that they just ask you to abstain from. So I think those are the big kind of rules or whatever for this style of program for the meditation. And there's two other things that I want to comment on that are important, and one of those is on day 4, I think, you start these 1-hour segments, and there's 3 in a day of meditating where you don't move at all. So you find a position, and that's it, and you don't move for an hour. And there's 3 of those every day starting on day 4, so day 4 to day 10. And those are pretty intense. And then the other thing that I want to mention is what the Vipassana meditation style looks like compared to other meditations. I've done meditating throughout my life off and on, and most often I've either like focused on the breath, is pretty routine, but then often I'll have something like a mantra that I'll say, or maybe I'll visualize something, or maybe I'll just allow visualization to happen. And in Vipassana, you really are simply kind of supposed to observe and observe sensation. And yeah, focus on the breath, but in a way that's really just like observing the natural respiration. You're not supposed to control the breathing or have a breath exercise or anything like that. So it's really just being present, being present, being present. When your mind starts to wander or visualize, or you notice you might be falling back on some mantras or saying breath in, breath out, any of that stuff, you just are supposed to kind of let it go and come back to self-observing, and noticing that everything is changing, constantly changing. And because of that, there's really not a reason to get attached to anything. And if there's no attachment, then there's no misery and no pain. There's also not necessarily passion. So for better or for worse, that's the kind of the philosophy or the approach that Vipassana asks for. So that's Vipassana. And so my reflections after meditating for essentially 10 days of silence, more isolated in a sense than I have been in quite some time. Sleeping alone multiple nights in a row for the first time in quite some time. Not having sexual activity, although I did self-sex a few times, masturbate a few times, but which I feel totally fine about. But not having physical activity with another person for that amount of time is definitely, it's been a while. Not having touch for that amount of time, that's been a really long time. It's been I don't know that I've ever done that. Not had any touch in 10 days besides myself. And not speaking, so interesting. No computer, no phone. That's the first time probably ever, And then meditating. Like I said, I have meditated before, but nothing like that. I don't think I've ever, by the end of the first day, I had meditated more than in my entire life. So it was very intense. Oh my God, it was so intense. You know when you have an intense experience, and the moments after, the day after, you're like, that was so intense, and you really feel it in your body. And then slowly, as the days go on, you process it, and you like integrate it, and you kind of release it, and you stop feeling it so intensely. That has definitely happened, because I don't feel it as intensely, as overwhelmingly. Like, it was very strong. When I got out of the course, I was just like, I'm never doing that again, ever. And I feel a bit more relaxed about that now. Like, I feel like, well, maybe I could see doing that again in my life. So the kind of the unpleasantness of it has sort of settled a bit. It was really hardcore. It was very difficult at times, emotionally, physically. It was very demanding. And because I completed something that was very demanding and tough and hard, there's a sense of satisfaction that comes along with that. And I feel very good about myself for doing it, for putting myself in that position and for completing it. And every time I had to sit still for an hour and just complete that, I felt like, yeah, good job, dude. Good job, because that shit was hard, But honestly, there's some deeper stuff that has happened that is a bit difficult to put into words. I love reading about the brain, and I love understanding how the brain works, and I have read enough information to know that we have a very powerful system up here, and that we have the opportunity to really create our lives through our perspectives. And that's what we have the power to really change. We don't necessarily have the power to change the weather, or if something good or bad is going to happen to us outside in the world. But what we do have the power to do is change our perspective. And not like in some like disassociated way where we just sort of, something kind of shitty happens and we're like, oh, it was fine, I feel great. When really like part of us is like, that was terrible, and you're not paying attention to the reality of the situation. That's not what I mean. I mean having a perspective that keeps coming back to a hopeful place, a healthy place, a loving place. And there's a lot of different ways to kind of get on that path, get that momentum going. And what I'm talking about is developing a healthy mind, a healthy body, and healthy relationships in our lives, this kind of triangle of health. And one of the ways to work on the triangle of health, to put in time and to put in energy to invest in our health, is to work on one of those pillars, which is our brain. And one of the ways to work on our brain is by focusing attention. And by simply focusing attention, we strengthen our brain, and we actually bring more life to our overall system. And we bring the ability to not be overwhelmed when things do come up externally that maybe feel hard, feel challenging, or feel unpleasant. So in knowing that about the brain, I knew that focusing intention through meditation, through this very mindful practice, you can't go wrong. It's only gonna be good. And that has certainly been true. Since the meditation, I feel like I have such strength and focus, and the ability to keep coming back to the truth that is, everything is changing. Everything is changing. Everything is changing, and everything is good, really, because it's life, and life is good. But there's something deeper. There's something really, really difficult to explain that has shifted. There were moments when I would be sitting in this meditation where you don't move for an hour, and I'd be scanning my body, and I could feel just everything. Like I could feel what felt like I could feel every cell alive and dancing around. And I could go inside of my body very easily and just feel my tongue, my throat, my larynx. I could feel my lungs and my heart and my guts. I could feel the inside. I could feel my bones. And sometimes I'd be scanning my body up and down, just feeling, and then I'd hit this pocket in my chest. And I would just cry, just start crying, and not attached to it, because this meditation, you just keep moving, you keep, scanning your body. But I would be having this reaction of tears, and then continuing to move, and then coming back and being like hit, and meanwhile trying not to move my body, but having, this emotional release happening. And that in itself is a very unexplainable. It's not connected in the parts of the brain that share language, or maybe what we would call, an intellectual area of the brain. It was very much in this kind of artistic feeling part of the brain. And I absolutely experienced healing in some of these meditations, where real integrating these concepts that I had experienced throughout my life of feeling maybe pain or trauma and had held on to in certain ways, and this releasing and a fuller understanding, not through intellect, not through something I could describe, but something that I felt and connected in a way that allowed me to heal and to move and to allow these pieces inside of me that had been trapped or stuck to move. So those releases, very clear that happened for me at least 3 different times that were really significant. But there's something deeper. My relationship with Brittany has been so profound. I mean, it's always been profound, but since Vipassana, it's just been like, I've been so like, and all the relationships that I've had. I'm here in Chiang Mai, Thailand now, and run into people or connect with people, some friends of ours, and they feel much more like, hey, here we are. But it's really easy to see it with Brittany because I spend so many hours of my day with her, and our sexual energy, our emotional energy, our conversations, just the time that we're sharing together, they all feel so here, so intense, so vibrant, so alive, so present, and it feels very, very good. And then there's just life, and I can't quite explain the difference. I don't know exactly what it is. It's only been 5 days since I've been out, and I feel like each day this reality makes more sense. It's making more sense. It's like, okay, I'm getting this, I'm doing that, I'm okay, this is, but it's still different. It's very, very different than it was. And maybe the obvious question would be like, well, is it better than it was, or is it worse than it was? And that's not really a quantifiable thing for me right now. It's very different. I would say it's healthier, and so in a sense, it's better, but it doesn't necessarily feel better, but it does feel healthier. And it's like, okay, now I have this lens, this new lens, and now it's my responsibility and an opportunity for me to understand life from here and move forward from here. And it is new, and often when we shed a layer or add a lens, however you want to look at it, when we get a new perspective, a fuller perspective, I think is appropriate to say, it's uncomfortable because we can no longer operate on habit, and we no longer have defaults that make sense, or autopilot mode that makes sense, and so we're kind of like here, really present again, and it takes a lot of energy. And because of that, I think I've been sleeping a lot more, craving a lot more sleep. Getting back into movement has been incredible. I love doing partner acrobatics, and getting back into that, feeling the body again, has just been awesome. Being able to make love has been like, holy shit, really amazing, really phenomenal. And connecting here on YouTube, I'm very interested and very curious how I want to do it, how I want to move forward, what I want to do with this channel. Been doing this channel now for, I don't know, almost 2 years or something like that, and I'm just curious about it. I don't know. I'm not sure what I want here. I know that I love connecting with you. I know that this is important for me, this exchange. But there are elements to it that I'm like, I don't know. So I'm gonna keep doing it, but I'm not sure. Things are reformatting, things are settling. And that goes with all social media and all computer stuff. That area in particular feels very like, whoa, I do not want to jump into autopilot around that. I want to be very intentional, and I feel like I'm just beginning to get back into it and feel it out and feel what's right for me there. I could probably talk about it for hours. I hope that reflection is good for you. I hope it's the length that feels good for you. I don't see how I could speak about it any shorter or any more condensed, really, without it being scripted, and I didn't want to script it. So thanks for listening, and I'll continue making the vids on minimalism, on abundant living, on health, on love, on that triangle of health that I'm talking about. It's super important to me, and just feeling a lot of love for you, a lot of appreciation that you care and want to connect with me in this way. It feels great to have this connection with you. I very much appreciate you. So thank you. Much love to you, and we will check in soon.